All right, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another Java project. For this Java project, it's gonna be the same as the last one, and where I just come up with a very common or simple enough idea for a very small, beginner-friendly Java project, and then I just do it all off the top of my head. I do it this way because I want people to be able to follow along and see, kind of approaches I take, how I think, things like that. A lot of people don't realize that when you're programming, you do have to get in kind of a different state of mind. So I do it this way because some people will walk through projects already completed and they don't really explain things too well. But this way, you can't miss anything. So I'll be explaining it as I go. So without further ado, let's get into it. So let's go through our comment here. So like I said, this is a beginner project which will cover how to create a simple calculator, and I do mean a very simple calculator. So let's look at the requirements here. We need to be able to read an input string because we need to be able to determine what are we trying to do here, add, subtract, what numbers are there, things of that nature. We need to be able to detect which operation is being performed, so plus, minus, division, and then we need to handle errors as well. So let's say someone tries to say, oh, what's dog plus 4? You can't do that, obviously. So that's something we'll need to handle. So let's see here. Things not being handled here are fractions. That's a little more or a little more advanced, just because with fractions you typically denote it with a division symbol, and then you have to take into account different. There's a whole bunch of scenarios and edge cases you have to cover there. That's more intermediate, not very beginner. So we're not going to go over fractions. Decimals are a lot easier than fractions. However, for the sake of this, we're just going to stick to simple old integers. And then we don't support multiple operations per request. That would mean you'd have to get into PEMDAS and pay attention to those rules. And that is a much more advanced, even more so than fractions. So in the next video, the next follow-up to calculator, we might cover this, but even then, PEMDAS would be quite a lengthy implementation without just copying some pre-made Stack Overflow answer. And that's not what we do here. So without further ado, I've been rambling for long enough. Let's get into this project. So for here, we have our very basic main class with our static main, not moin, system output of print hello world. So let's just do a quick run, make sure that this works and builds. Okay, cool. So we have hello world here. We can close this and therefore get rid of that. So for our calculator, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a new Java class called calculator. I spelled that right? Okay, cool. Let's make this, and then I'm not going to be using any generative AI or anything like that. I'm going to be typing this all old school, I guess, now these days is what it would be considered. Let's do calculator. We don't need it to set any variables or anything like that. So here I want to have a public. Let's do void, and then let's have a print welcome text, I guess. And then let's do another one where we let's print, what else are we gonna need? Continue text, because we're gonna support multiple operations in this. So like we can do 2 + 2, and then let's say they want to do another what do you call it, operation, we can do that as well. And then let's do public void. Let's do a print error text here, and then I might accept the parameter there later. Not totally sure. And then let's do one more where we print exit text. So that should be good enough for all of our prints. So I'm gonna put those on the bottom. But we also need to integer do calculation. So we need some way. We're gonna take our input string, inputs. And then for right now, we'll just return 0 because we're not doing anything with it just yet. So I think this is kind of a good bare bones kind of setup for our class, and what, off the top of my head, things we're gonna have to do. So let's go back to our main class. I can close that now, give us a little more extra space. So for here, we want to make a new calculator. Equals new calculator. And then we're going to do a cardinal sin of the programming world and do a while true loop. Okay, so you're yelling at me for that. That's totally fine. So for while true, we want to do... Actually, before we even do that, we want to do calculator dot print welcome text. And then while true, we want to do a... Now that I'm thinking about it, we have that continue error exit. Let's do a public void print inputs ask. Print ask for input. Yes, that would be better. So for here, we want to do calculator dot print ask for inputs. And then from here, we're going to want to do a buffered reader. So we can do, I can remember how to do that. Well, let's not initialize it in the while loop, actually. Let's do it out here so we don't keep reinitializing stuff. Not that in this case it really matters that much, but, you know, be more efficient and better practiced where you can. And then from there, I'm pretty sure we need a new input stream reader, I think. And then system.in. Okay. I think this is that what you're yelling at me about? Yeah. Forgot the new. That's totally fine. So what this is going to do is it's going to read our text that we input. So if we go here, we go to buffer, we have now our reader. So now we can do a, let's do a string of, I don't know, input equals reader.readline. And here we are getting a exception. So we can throw an IO exception just out of this in case, I'm not even really sure what would cause this to error out. And so it's being read as a string. So it's not like you can put numbers or fractions or whatever you want in there. Okay, so we have our inputs here. Let's separate it like that. And then let's do our calculator dot do calculation with our input string. And then from there, let's do... I'm trying to think of how I want to do this actually, because what if we input something wrong? So let's do a try around this. And we can catch an exception here. Let's call it exception. I don't like putting E. It's not my thing. So do calculation, and I'm thinking about it now, is we can just do void. We don't have to return anything from this now that I'm thinking about it. And then we can do, I don't know, throws exception. So now this should also be good because we're already catching it here. Okay, so now this is void. We're not going to return anything because we don't really need to return anything now that I'm thinking about it. And this is really for, this case is for when we're trying to parse what our input string was. Meaning, so if we try to do, like I said earlier, dog plus 4, can't do that, so we want to catch an exception. And then let's do... From here, let's do continue. Meaning that anything that happens in here will just reset the while loop. I'm pretty sure that's how and that's how it works in for loops. I'm assuming while loop's the same thing. So for here, we can ask for print welcome text. Let's get some of this out. So a quick IntelliJ thing is if you do sout and then tab, it'll do system.out.print, which I'm assuming will be helpful for quite a lot of people who maybe don't know that. So here we'll say, welcome to our basic calculator. So we'll just do that, then ask for input. So we'll do the sout again, And then we'll say, you know, please input what calculation you would like to do. And then from here, actually, let's do another thing. And then let's do examples, you know, let's do 1 plus 2. I don't know, 3 times 4, things like that. And then let's do another note here. Just because of this, since this is a basic calculator, we need to let the user know that they have to format our input in a very specific way. Because since we're parsing an integer, or parsing a string into integers and stuff and other things, we need to, you know, make sure we tell them how to do it. Otherwise, let's be confused on why it's failing all the time. So from here, this is kind of something I would suggest maybe branching off and adding more cases for it if you would like. But for the purpose of this video, I'll keep it short and sweet and do super basic. So for our purposes, we'll have to do 1 plus 2 with no spaces in here. That's very important. And then, actually, you know what? Let's do it with spaces. That's going to make our life a little easier, actually. So if you do it with spaces, you can do it this way. And then say note it's important to, I don't know, leave a space between the number and operation. So there, we're asking for our inputs. Cool. So now we have what we're doing here. This doesn't have to be in this calculator class, but since it's associated with it, I kind of want to have it in here. Print continue text, we can leave that now. So this is our error text. So print, we can print, that's not what okay, let's do this. Did you follow the examples and read the note? Let's do that input doesn't work with me. Something like that. I'm not sure. So here we can catch an error, an exception, which is what we're going to throw. And then we can do calculator dot print error text. So right now this is grayed out because this is the last statement in the loop, which is not going to be the case for much longer. So that's why it's grayed out for now. And then here's our exit text. So we will fill that in later. Continue text will also fill in later. Right now we need to work on doing the calculator, which is the actual bread and butter of this entire project. So in here, let's do this. So we're going to do integers. Integer number 1. Let's do that. And then actually let's do this. Number 2. So we have 2 integers here, neither of which are initialized. From here, we will get our string array. What we're going to do is inputs equals, what is it? Inputs dot split, and we want to split on spaces, which is why I did this. So what this is basically going to do is we're going to take our input string, let's say it's 1 plus 2, and we're going to split it based on where the spaces are. So in this case, here. So we'll get a 3, we'll have a string array with 3 objects in it. Well, 3 separate strings. One will be 1. The next one will be the plus sign, and then the last slot in that array will be R2. So there we go. So from here, since we know what our inputs need to be, we can directly index this without checking for too much or doing too much error checking. So here's what we can try to do. We can try to do number 1 equals integer dot Parse int inputs. Make sure we get the plural here, and 0 index, and then the number 2 equals pretty much the same thing, but dot parse int inputs, and then we'll index our, not the third slot, that slot. So essentially what this is inputs 0 is going to be number 1 in this case for this example, and then number 2 is going to be 2 because in slot 1 here is our plus sign. So what we're going to do is catch an exception, and we can be more specific with what kind of exceptions. Like this exception, just kind of a catch-all, and I would do a, let's see, what was it, a parse integer dot, I don't even know what it is, honestly. So we're just gonna leave it at exception. So what we'll do here is we will throw the exception. We don't really care what the exception is because we already know it's you did something wrong with your input here. So I'm not gonna really do anything with that. And then from here we can keep moving on. So now we have our numbers. So if we give, you know, dog in this case, so if we do dog plus 2, like I keep saying, it'll try to parse dog as an integer, and that's not going to work. So it's going to throw an exception, which we catch here and then throw out. And I'm just doing it this way so we know like where our exceptions are, because in theory you could just, I'm pretty sure you could just leave it as is without a try catch case, and it would just throw it, which is totally fine. Which I think I will do that. Actually, we will do that since we're already throwing the exception. Okay, so we have our, which means we don't need to do it that way anymore. Integer number 2, and then we can just get rid of this altogether. Okay. This is a bit cleaner, but not as unclean in quotes, depending on how you look at it. So from here we have our numbers, and then we're going to do a, that's lowercase, right? Switch inputs 1. And then I think you do this, right? Oh no, is it like this? So let's do case plus, and then here we'll just have break just for now, and then case of what do we have, multiplication can go here, and we will break out of that. I'm just setting this all up just for I don't know if we need break in these. But I'm gonna do it just in case. Let's see what it does. I don't fully remember. So case subtraction, and then what else do we have? We said we had, what have I not done? Division. So we can do division. And then there was one more, plus multiplication, and then I think we did the remainder, right? Case of that is break. So covering all our bases, let me check real quick. Yep, okay. So here is how we determine what to do with those numbers. So in this case, if it's plus, we'll do, we'll print out, let's do this actually. Let's take another one where we public void print answer and integer, and that's the answer. And then we can just do print answer. We can do it this way, kind of convoluted, doesn't really need to be broken out, but if we do print answer, and then print answer should also be private. We don't need anyone else to have access to that. Print answer of number 2, I guess it doesn't matter which we do. Plus number 1. I kind of want it to be uniform, so I am gonna move it because it doesn't matter when it comes to division and stuff. Plus, and there we go. And then here we can do a print answer of number 1 times number 2. And then we can do print answer of number 1 minus number, not number 1, I do it twice. Well, I guess you could, but that would not give you the right answer. And then we can print our answer of number 1 divided by number 2. Now we'll come back to this because division has its special cases here. And then we will do print answer number 1 and then number 2. So 2 test cases you need to be wary of, 2 edge cases, I guess you could say, is, as we all know in math, you can't divide by 0. So that would end up throwing us an error. So what we want to do here is check to make sure that number 2 is not 0. And since we're doing it twice, I will probably just break it out into another method. What do we want to do? Boolean, I guess? Check if 0, and then we'll pick our integer input, and then return, I guess, input is 0. So let's return true or false depending on if input equals 0 or not. So where are we? Need to do this, and then we need to do if, oh, I'm not gonna do that. If, check if 0, number 2. We can print our answer. So let's move that. Else, we need to do something else. We need to, let's do this. Public, and that's gonna be a private, I guess. Private void print divide by 0 error. If I could spell, that'd probably be ideal. And we'll do this. You can't divide by 0, you silly goose. There we go. And then here we will refactor this to make it more, it's up here, refactor, or let's see here, print input parse error text. I guess we can do that. And since I refactored here, it will change over wherever I had it here. Yeah. So we can do that. And you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, we do need to move this stuff back in, because now we're gonna be throwing multiple errors. So what we need to do is what we had before, putting it back. This is why we do it live, to see that everyone makes mistakes. So what we're gonna do is move this back up to this number 2, doom doom, and then number 1, we'll just take the rest of this out, and then we will take this out, delete these lines, and then there. And then here we need to do a, where is it? We can move this to private also because no one needs access to this. There we go. And then here we can, let's just throw the exception out of here. We can still throw the exception, that's fine. And then here we're getting an error because it's no longer public. So we don't want it to be. Okay, so now we're in a much better state. Else, we want to throw an exception out here. Can I just throw it like that? No. Okay. New exception. So we have to throw a new exception here because we need to inverse this actually. So now that I'm looking at it, because we need to check if it's 0. If it is 0, it'll return true, and we need to inverse this. To, you know, hit this. We could do it another way if we want, but this is how I'm going to do it. And then we print our answer, and then we throw a new exception if the number is 0. So that should be good there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be somewhat lazy, not really, efficient's a better word, and just copy paste this because we have to follow the same logic anyway. Let's remove this break, and instead of division, we do our percent to get the remainder. And then that's good. And then we need to do one last thing, case default. And in the switch case, the label for default case must only use the default keyword. Without case. Oh, without case. Okay. Default case meaning, something weird happened. So we can just print out this should never happen. And then we can just break out of here. And then that is our switch case. So from here to here, this should cover all of our bases, and we should have, oh, what are you doing? I had nothing weird, did I? Hopefully not. And then we should be good with our calculator, honestly. And then we need to fill in some other things here. We need to print divide by 0 error. I forgot about that. We don't just want to throw an exception here without any kind of extra information to go on. So our continue text, that should handle pretty much all of this. So then from here, we want to do our continue text. And we want to do, would you like to keep calculating? Here we'll just do yes, no. And then we will do, so after this point, we can do come back down here and do calculator dot print continue text, and let's keep our input the same string. It doesn't really matter at this point. Endpoints equals reader dot readline. So from here, we've asked for the inputs. So what we're doing is we're printing welcome text. So our thing boots up, we're asking for inputs, and then we are reading the inputs, doing our calculations with that whole method we just did. And then from there, assuming we get no calculation errors or exceptions, we are going to come down here and we're going to ask the user if they would like to continue or not. And based on our read line, we can just do some calculations in here, and we can do if inputs. So let's do this. If yes dot equals ignore case inputs, else we just want to break out of this loop. So we're doing yes equals ignore case, meaning you can type in yes with a capital Y, lowercase everything else, or lowercase everything, uppercase, mix and match it. Doesn't really matter. So I usually use equals ignore case unless you need to be something very specific. This is probably your best bet. So here we can actually just invert this, and then we don't even need it. That I think we just break out of this loop. And then, yep, that should be our calculator done. And then here's the end of our loop. So let's do calculator dots print exit text. And then from here, we need to fill in what we're going to do. So we're going to do the thanks for using me question mark. We're going to leave that one up to them. So this should be our calculator. So from here, before we hit it run for the first time, which I should have tested it a couple times by this point, but oh well. We're going to do a initialize our calculator. We're going to print the welcome text. So if we come into here, we're going to do this. Welcome to our basic calculator. Let's back it up a little bit. I don't know the Windows keybinds to go back. So from here, we have our buffered reader to read inputs, and then while true, we're going to do a calculator.ask for, or print for inputs, which is this. And then we'll go back. We will read the inputs. From there, we will do our calculation. And then from there, we split our calculation by the spaces, that and that. And if we have an input, or like someone inputs it wrong or says dog, keep using, we will print our exception. So that's cool. And then from there, we will an exception, then we'll throw the exception. And then if we catch an exception here, we'll just continue with the loop and ask for input again. From here, we do our switch case of our inputs in the slots with index of 1, which in our case here would be the plus or whatever operand we're trying to use here. Switch it out for plus, multiplication, minus, division, and then I'm forgetting what it's called, but it's just the remainder. And I'm just gonna put this one line up just because it's bothering me. I don't know why it's bothering me, but it is. So we do all that, and then we have our default case, so we catch it just in case something weird happens, which it should never get there, but just in case it does. This should never happen. Did you not use one of the normal operators? And that should be that. We could specify, I'm thinking to myself, we could specify here that we only accept certain kinds of operations. So we could go and print out that we only accept these as our operations, but for now I'll just leave it. So from there, we do our calculations. We check to make sure that we're not trying to divide by 0. And then if that works, we print our answer out, which is just a simple print. And then we ask if you want to continue, which looks like this. Would you have to keep calculating, yes or no? In this case, we're only checking for yes. If you put anything other than yes, it's just going to ignore it, and we're going to break out and print our exit text, which is thanks for using me question mark. So I have not tested this at all. Let's cross our fingers and run it, and we will check to make sure that everything is working the way it should. So far we have welcome to our basic calculator. Please input what calculation you'd like to do. Examples. Note it's important to leave a space between number and operation. So everything printed out well so far. Let's try and do a clean run here off the bat and do it the way we're supposed to. So let's do 4 plus 4. We should obviously expect 8 back. 8, we're going to keep calculating. And let's just say yes. Okay, so our loop works fine. Now let's try and break it. Let's do 2 minus 3, and since there's no space between those, it should break. Did you follow the example and read the note that input doesn't work with me? So that's good. And then if we do 2 minus, what do I do here? 2 minus 3. We put -1. That's good. We have to keep calculating. And then let's do yes. And then let's try dividing by 0. So if we do 3 divided by 0, you can't divide by 0, you silly goose. So good. That error catching works. And then let's also try doing our remainder by 0. It should work, but you know, it can't divide by 0, you silly goose. Cool. So then let's try doing 3 plus, and let's do 3 spaces, 4. And then that should break it as well. And now let's do 9, remainder 3, so that should be 0. If I remember what this does. I am so smart. And then let's just say we don't want to continue calculating. So we can type in literally anything here and it should just exit. Thanks for using me, question mark. Process exit with 0. And there you go. There is a calculator that is functional, handles our requirements, input string, able to detect which operations being performed, handle errors. We are not handling fractions or decimals, or multiple operations per request. Now for decimals, I'm going to show you a real quick thing that you could do. Is you can change integer here to, watch this, a float. And then if we do this, float dot parse float. This isn't part of the requirements, but I just want to show you guys how easy it is to switch it over. And then from here, when you take in, that was the wrong key. Take in a float instead of an integer. And then this also needs to take in a float instead of an integer. And then we should be good here. So now we can actually handle decimals. I just want to show you guys the integers first. So we are going above and beyond in this. So now if we do, I don't know, 3.4 plus 6.2, that should be 9.6. 9.6. And look at that, another calculator handles decimals. How easy was that? Fractions, different story, much harder. But I'm not going to run through all the errors. We've already checked it all. So thanks for using me. Question mark. And there, now you have a full calculator, whether you left with integers or you converted it to floats to handle decimals. There you go. Very short, sweet, simple calculator. And I do plan on making a follow-up to this video for more intermediate projects, but that is for a later date. Hopefully you guys understood everything. If there's any random questions, or not random questions, any questions or anything I went over or things like that, leave them in the comments. To help you out, leave a like. Maybe subscribe if you want to see more whatchamacallit projects. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one.